Hello everyone, Theodore Shoebat here, giving you guys another message that you will not hear at church. I guarantee it. So I keep hearing about this DACA thing. And initially I wasn't going to do a video on this. It's not my subject of interest. But I keep hearing people talking about it. I keep hearing radio guys talking about it and bloggers talking about it and just it's a subject of big interest on the internet. So I decided, you know what, I'm going to look into this. So DACA is Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. Essentially what happened was back in 2012, Obama allowed, through an executive order, allowed over 800,000 or so children of illegals to live in the United States. So these kids have been living in America for most of their lives. America is the country that they know best. And supposedly Trump wants to remove DACA, get rid of DACA, and he is allowing the Congress to do it for him. He's not going to make the executive decision. He said, I'm going to give Congress some months to handle the situation, to figure it out. Meanwhile, you have all these right-wing radio hosts and all these types of people coming out and saying, he needs to remove DACA, he needs to get rid of it, we need to put Americans first, and he needs to reverse all the destruction that Obama did, and blah, blah, blah. Here is my assessment, right? So I've been doing some reading on this situation, and I found out that what Obama did regarding DACA, I'm not talking about any of his other immigration decisions. I'm talking about DACA. What Obama did with DACA was pretty much the same type of thing that every president has done since Dwight Eisenhower was president. So I found a number of publications on this subject, and I'm going to read to you how past presidents, Republican and Democrat, have done similar things to DACA. And it says here, in 1956, President Dwight D. Eisenhower used executive authority to parole 923 foreign-born orphans into the custody of U.S. military families seeking to adopt them. That was an executive order regarding immigration. 1959 to 1972, Presidents Eisenhower, John F. Kennedy, Lyndon B. Johnson, and Richard Nixon used executive powers to parole into the U.S. a majority of 621,403 Cuban asylum seekers fleeing the Cuban Revolution. The Cuban Adjustment Act was pending in Congress at the time. So there you go. Kennedy did it with the Cubans. Ronald Reagan did it with the Nicaraguans. Eisenhower also did a similar act, a similar executive order. These are things that are similar to DACA. So what Obama did wasn't really that unique. I can go on. It says here, in 1976, President Gerald Ford granted so-called extended voluntary departure to protect from deportation an unknown number of Lebanese who fled Lebanon for the U.S. They also were provided work permission. Oh my God, he helped Lebanese people fleeing the Lebanese Civil War. He's destroying America. He's going to destroy the local white population here in the U.S. and these Lebanese people are going to take the jobs from black people. You can imagine people talking like this in these times, right, under these presidential administrations. It says here, in 1980, President Jimmy Carter paroled 123,000 Cubans and Haitians into the U.S. during the Mariel boat lift. And for all of you right-wingers out there who would probably have gotten pissed at something like this, a lot of these Cubans are voting Republican today because they escaped the Cuban Revolution, which was very violent. And when the communists took over, people like Che Guevara had itchy trigger fingers, and they just could not wait to conduct their firing squads and murder innocent people. Murder Christians, crying out, Viva Cristo Rey. Well, the United States opened its doors to those people. And I'm sure there were people in those days making the same damn remonstrances, the same damn protests they're making today. And many of these Cubans, like I said, they vote Republican. A lot of them voted for Donald Trump. It says here, in 1987, President Ronald Reagan deferred deportation for children in more than 100,000 families if the parents of the families were gaining legal status under the 1986 Immigration Reform and Control Act, IRCA, that granted legalization to about 3 million immigrants. There you go. There's Ronald Reagan, the prophet of the Republican Party. He also did similar things to help immigrants. He also made similar executive actions to help immigrants. Not so different from DACA. 1990, President George H. Bush used executive powers to defer deportations of up to 1.5 million spouses and children of people legalized under IRCA, that is, Immigration Reform and Control Act, that was passed under the Reagan administration. In 2002, President George W. Bush expedited naturalization for green card holders who enlisted in the military, eliminating a 3-year wait. No numbers of how many affected was available. And I remember this. I remember reading about this during the Iraq War, during the beginning stages of the Iraq War. I was in high school, and I remember opening up a magazine, and it had an article there about Mexicans who were not citizens joining the military and thereby making it easier for them to become citizens. And I remember reading it. I remember there was one guy, I think he was some sort of a military official, American military official, who said something to the likes of, well, listen, if you're willing to take a bullet for this country, then you should be given citizenship. But again, they were illegal. They crossed the border. They should have been deported. They should all be deported, but yet a lot of them joined the military. And, you know, a lot of these guys who cross the border, they have children in America. Some of these kids end up joining the police force. A lot of these kids end up joining the military. And as far as these DACA people go, for one thing, it's not their fault that they're in the United States. I mean, for the most part, it's not their fault. Their parents brought them over here. America is the country that they know. So I'm not going to be one of these wackos who's like, deport them all, kill them all, throw them all out. Donald Trump, most likely, you know, he's leaving it all up to Congress. Most likely, most of these DACA people are going to be legalized. That's my prediction, and I hope I'm right. The ones who have been convicted of crimes, and some of them have, right, a minority, some of them have been convicted of crimes, these people should be deported. Completely agree. Again, I'm all for having a balanced view. Again, I'm not one of these guys who's crazy about, you know, open borders or anything like that. I'm not one of these guys, and I know some of you may think I am. I know some of you want for me to be one of those guys because you think I'm some sort of a secret liberal, right? Oh yeah, I'm a big Antifa, leftist, socialist, right? But the reality is that I try to have a balanced view on these things. And when I see people getting riled up on both sides, I always try to look for the most balanced view, because the left and the right are both very chaotic. They're both emotionally unstable. They both have this 5 minutes to midnight mentality in which they think the end of the world is near. And anytime you see that sort of mentality, it's always very dangerous. You know, very apocalyptic, very crazy, very hysterical and chaotic. Anytime you see that sort of activity, it's like what I call it's like the gazelle type situation, right? Is the way that I like to describe it. You know, you see the gazelles, they're all rushing to the water hole to drink water. But you know there's a gator waiting for them just to get that one gazelle who's not looking close enough. And so the best thing to do is to wait for all the... This is my policy on life, actually. And you can apply this to all situations in life. The best policy is to wait for all the gazelles to go to the water hole. You wait behind, you lag behind. Watch the gators eat a few of them, and the gators are not hungry anymore. A few of them get eaten, the rest of the gazelles flee. Then you go to the water hole and you enjoy water. Because the gators are not going to eat you. Their bellies are full. That is my mentality when it comes to dealing with society and just living in society. Anytime I see mobs of people being crazy about a certain subject, usually it's bad. Sometimes the situation calls for it, right? You're about to go to war, you're being invaded, something. I can understand that. I can understand people collectively being enthusiastic or being concerned about a certain situation. I get it. But for the most part, do not follow the mob. Just don't do it. There was another publication. This was done by Pew Research, and they did an interesting chart that shows executive orders on immigration from Kennedy all the way to Obama. And it says here 1961 1961 Kennedy directed the Department of Health, Education, and Welfare to establish a formal program to assist Cuban refugees. Around 1 million refugees were involved in this executive order. In 1975, from 1975 to 1979, see, President Ford and Carter, they did an executive order, and it describes it as Vietnamese with American ties are evacuated and brought to the U.S. in spring of 1975. 360,000 immigrants were affected in this. Oh, those Vietnamese, they're going to bring in communism, you know. You could just imagine the type of stuff that people were saying in these situations. And they were saying the same shit back in the early 20th century with the Italian immigrants. And they were saying the same thing about the Poles and the Jews. Do you know who was this way? Oh, a lady that all evangelicals hate, and rightfully hate, Margaret Sanger. Margaret Sanger hated the Jews and the Italians and the Poles and the blacks, and she believed that the Anglo-Saxon race should be the only race allowed to live in America. And that is what she wanted, and she wasn't alone. There were a lot of people like that. And they would use facts to substantiate their craziness, their racism. Oh, the Italians are involved in crime. And guess what? It was true. A lot of Italians were involved in crime. In fact, the decade in which you have the highest number of American cops killed was the decade of the 1920s. This is what I have read. Now, in the decade of the 1920s, around 2,000 police officers were murdered, mainly by the mafia. That was the biggest reason why all these cops were being killed. Now, I don't know if in this decade that number has been exceeded, but from what I have read, around 2,000 cops were murdered in the decade of the 1920s. And it was mainly because of the situation with the mafia. So in those days, you could have made the same claim about the Italians. You could have made the same claim that they used for the Italians for Mexican people today. Oh, they're involved in crime. Well, that's true. A lot of them are involved in crime. Oh, there is a lot of crime that comes from, that's done by Mexicans. Not denying that. But you could have said the same thing about the Italians. You could have said the same thing about the Italians. You could have said the same thing about the Poles. You could have said the same thing about the Jews. You know, there was a Jewish mafia back in the day. Oh, I'm sure you didn't know that. They don't talk about that. They talk about the Italian mafia all the time, but there was also a Jewish mafia. And there were people saying the same thing about the Jews. Oh, they're causing crime. Oh, they're going to ruin America. Oh, they're going to destroy this country. We're going to be conquered. They were saying the same thing about the Chinese. Oh, the yellow man is going to invade us. They're going to take us over. And you're hearing the same shit today. Oh, the white race is going to be replaced in America. There's going to be no white people in America in 70 years. And they keep increasing the years. You know, in 20 years, there's going to be no white people. Oh, in 50 years, in 60, 70 years, there's going to be no white people. We're going to be replaced. This is the great replacement. Blah, 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 blah. People have been talking this way in this country for decades. And guess what? Here's my prediction. The right wing isn't going to stop talking about this issue. In fact, the elites in the right-wing circles, they don't want what they're saying they want. In other words, let's say they get what they want, right? And immigration just stops, and all these people are deported. All these people, all these kids are deported, DACA, whatever, all that. They get whatever the hell they want. They don't want that to happen. Because if they get what they want, then they're no longer relevant. To make themselves relevant, they have to complain about something, so they need something to complain about. It's the same thing with the pro-life issue. Now, pro-lifers, yeah, the average pro-lifer who goes to the pro-life rally, sure, they want abortion gone, right? I do too, rightfully. But the pro-life elites, the guys who are making the big money, the pro-life pimps, the guys who are making all the cash from the donations and whatnot, they don't want abortion abolished. They want abortion to continue because it makes them relevant. And with relevancy, you have money. It's the same thing with the race pimps. Al Sharpton and Jesse Jackson and Michael Eric Dyson and Cornel West and all the rest of these guys. They are living off this fear of racism in America. And let's say racism completely disappears in America. They're no longer relevant. And plus, those people are full of shit because if they really wanted to fight racism, they would all be against Planned Parenthood. But they're all in favor of Planned Parenthood. And they all love Margaret Sanger, even though she was one of the biggest racists ever. So they actually want racism to continue. Because, well, for one thing, they hate blacks. These people don't like blacks. They hate their own people, which is why they support Planned Parenthood. Because the majority of the babies being killed are black babies. And plus, they want the perceived racism that they talk about so that they can remain in power. So that they become, so that they have positions of influence. Because when their followers think that racism exists, they look up to them. Governments do the same type of thing. They allow terrorist attacks to take place. Why? Because it makes government relevant. And when government is relevant, then government has political leverage, political advantage, and all of that. So the right wing isn't going to stop talking about this issue. They have been talking about immigration for decades, and it's not going to stop. And here's the thing, and I want to finish with this. You keep hearing these patriots, right? All these nationalist types. They keep saying, well, I want to put Americans first. And I heard this on the Tucker Carlson show last night. He said, well, frankly, I care more about American citizens than I do immigrants. And blah, blah, blah. I really believe that they replaced Bill O'Reilly with this guy because the people who run Fox News are eugenists, and they want Fox News to be more favorable towards eugenics, and they want to percolate that evil sentiment. And Bill O'Reilly was a man who fought against racism. He fought against this alt-right bullshit, and so they replaced him. That's what I really believe. And so here's Tucker Carlson saying, I care more about Americans than I do immigrants, right? As if the American person is superior to everyone else. And you see all this talk, these people who talk this way, I have not heard any one of these pimps, these scam artists, say, we need to get rid of homosexuality in this country. Never once have I heard this, ever. And this is the question that I have for all of you types who talk this way. You're sick of the Mexicans taking your jobs, supposedly, which is also bullshit. You're sick of it all, right? Here's a choice that I'll present to you. You have Jose, who is a hard worker, has 5, 6 children. His kids are growing up in the U.S. They speak English. They're not really a threat to anyone. They're not committing crimes. But then on the other side, you have a sodomite who is born in America, white, is a citizen, right? American citizen, born American citizen. But he pushes for homosexuality. He pushes for population control, because all these sodomites are for population control. That's why they're sodomites. And he pushes all sorts of eugenist perversities. Which one do you deport? Which one do you get rid of? That's the question that I have for you guys. Anyway, oh, that music popped up from a commercial, but I think it would have gone great with the ending. This is Theodore Shoebat. I hope you guys have enjoyed this message. Hope you guys have learned something from this message. You just heard some theology. God bless, and God be with us.